Ladies and gentlemen, teleporting through walls, trade quests like Zelda, and playing in a rock band. Welcome to your new Megadungeon, Tazavesh, the Veiled Market. Let's go! Welcome inside. This place is pretty cool, man. It's got some of the most creative bosses I've seen in such a long time, which is what I'm hoping from the Megadungeon, is it should have that extra element to it. There is a clear divide in the middle, which is going to be split in two, of course, for Mythic Plus when that is available. Currently, there is no hard mode for this, like we saw with Megadungeon to provide some sort of extra thing. Have to wonder if that's going to be there. What is the setting here? We are in the Veiled Market, this hidden market of the brokers, and we are looking for some valuable relics that are being held inside. And it has taken on the theme of almost being a port authority. You start on the port theme, and you're going to go through customs, and then go into all the things you kind of expect inside a market, including an auction and all those kinds of things, and playing in a rock band, and dealing with the post. It's a pretty excruciatingly wondrous place. I wouldn't say, though, that I walked away feeling overwhelmed, like I did with Karazhan. Like I did the latter half of Megadungeon. Of course, Megadungeon's first half was reused outdoor Megadungeon, but done in a decent way, I would say, with the bosses being very much more prominent there. This place does reuse old assets. We are going to be visiting Legion, and we're also going to be visiting BFA, but we'll get to that as we work through the dungeon. So let's get started. We do start going through customs, first of all, and we're going to kill all the customs guys, because they don't want us to go in. We're not welcome here, and that, of course, will activate the boss of the first area. So, interestingly enough, the first boss can absolutely be pulled with all the trash in the room straight away. They're definitely thinking with Mythic Plus in mind here for big super pulls where you can have a lot of fun. They have gone down the road of classic Blizzard fashion, is in every pack there is that singular enemy that is the big problem. In the first pack, I believe they're called Specialists. They do a good 6 or 7 channeled stun. Very similar to what you would see in Necrotic Wake with the Drain Fluids cast. Same sort of thing. And this is a theme that will go on throughout the dungeon. So as we enter, we do go into Customs Office. They have an auction in there, an auction house, a fully usable auction house, by the way. You can absolutely pick stuff up. If you forgot to get your drums, you can buy them there, as long as you've got a portable post box. I think there's a post box later on. As we go in, we're going to just defeat the general trash, which will then have one sort of executive guy. We kill him to spawn the boss. Okay, so he's not actually the boss. He's going to spawn the boss, which is going to be Zofex the Sentinel. Now, this guy looks super cool. He's got laser buzzsaws at the front of him. He's got shields and things. Not an overly difficult boss to get you started here. Remember, this is Mythic 0, essentially. This is not going to have any Mythic Plus modifiers added to it yet, and there are definitely some bosses which may be considered pug killers, or you know they're going to be the nightmares moving forward. This boss's coolest mechanics, I think, is one is he steals your weapon, because he's like taking your weapons off you, as customs would, you know, hand over your weapon, and also the interrogation mechanic. So stealing your weapon will leave it somewhere on the ground with a nice light out of it, so you can go and pick it up again and carry on. Interrogation is going to fixate someone in the group. That person has to move away from the boss, but also the rest of the group needs to kind of go with them, because once the interrogation cast is complete, you're going to be put into a prison for failing your interrogation. That has to be broken out, and it has quite a bit of HP, by the way. You do need the group to swap to this in order to break it. It's not a case of everybody else can just ignore it and one guy kill it. You do need to swap to it and get it down before he gets there, because he comes at you with his 2 rotating buzzsaws in order to chop you up as he gets to you. But once that's done, we're going to enter the market proper, okay? So Customs is protecting the market proper. You go into the big open area. It is like a full city. It's really quite cool. It's not lively and bustly because it is a dungeon, and I really hope they do consider reusing Tazavesh in later patches in a different way. You can honestly see a lot of possibility here with having underground trade deals, backhanded mount sales, all this kind of stuff would happen in Tazavesh. And if it's an important item, or some sort of rare collectible, you can see something going on here, especially as they do have the option of trade questing, which is a part of this dungeon. As we move through the market, though, we will start getting to the security patrols, and some of the animals, like the core hounds, on sale will start breaking loose and starting to cause havoc in the town as you're moving your way through, where we'll eventually arrive at our second boss, the Menagerie. Now, the Menagerie is an open auction. People are bidding on rare creatures that are available, of course, in the Shadowlands. Now, this goes horribly wrong, as you can probably expect, where we'll then get a 3-boss scenario, something like you would expect to see almost in the Trial of the Crusader in this style. Big open room, and then Northrend Beast is what I'm thinking of, where you have a boss, and then another boss, and another boss. This was the most forgettable boss, I would say. The mechanics were ultra basic, stuff on the floor, move away from the group, some orbs to avoid. There is one cool mechanic going on here, is that these blue orbs that are floating around actually give you a 5% damage decrease, and it stacks, so you want to avoid them, unless you get the Gluttony buff. Whoever gets the Gluttony buff can run around and soak up all these orbs and turn it into a damage bonus. So you really do want to pay attention to who gets that. It is based on proximity to the boss, though, so you can pre-plan who can get it. Now, typically, this is going to be melee. What you don't really want this on is the tank, obviously. So you do need to be, if you are the melee guy or you're a caster who wants to kind of snipe this buff, you want to be the closest to the boss. Because, according to the Dungeon Journal, it is proximity-based, and when we had it, it did go on the melee and the tanks. So something to bear in mind there. Going back out, we're going to go back through the same area again that we just went through, so you can choose to clear the trash on the way. And our next boss is going to be the Post. Mailroom Mayhem is what they're calling this. And it's a big post bot who deals with the mail. This boss is great as well. Lots of interesting fun, very, very relaxed. Very much what we saw in Karazhan, with taking a more jovial, more fun twist with it, more like a circus type environment, where the boss is going to have packages that are full of poison that need to be soaked up. You don't want to do that. Packages that are going to blow up. Someone's been mailing bombs in. A little bit on the nose, but it's good. And you've got to pick them up. You've got to throw them into the vents and get them out of the room, because if you throw them, I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I threw mine at the boss, thinking maybe it was kind of like an old school Mr. Pandaria mechanic, where we picked up the bombs the boss threw at us and throw them back at the boss. Nope, that AoEs the whole group. Don't do that. You need to dispose of them properly. This is a mailroom after all. It needs to be dealt with and done properly. But overall, very fun boss. Next, we're going to move over to Omiz's Oasis. Now, this is where people are either going to be pissed off or not. I personally think this mechanic is okay. It is the trade quest. So the idea is there is this oasis, this pleasure area, this private bar that you cannot get into. There's a doorman who will not let you in without the password. So in order to get the password, we're going to have to deal with the marketplace outside. And each of the main brokers out there has a theme. Some are interested in gemstones. Some are interested in fossils. Some are interested in alchemy. And what happens here is there is a vendor who will sell you an item which you can then give to the appropriate person. So if he drops something like expensive cloth, the tailor is likely to be interested in that. So you're going to take that to the tailor, who's then going to give you, say, a bag full of gems. The gemstone guy is going to be interested in that, who might give you a book of alchemy stuff, which the alchemy guy will want. Anybody who's played Legend of Zelda 100% knows what this is. It's just a trade quest, which ultimately the guy, whichever the finale is, after 3 trades, will give you the password in order to enter the Oasis. So this sounds probably like a bit of a pain in the ass, a bit like Court of Stars, for those of you who did that, where you had this spot who the spy is quest at the end, and sometimes it could go horribly wrong and tank your key. This is much simpler than that, because it's very obvious where these things are supposed to go. It is a gauntlet, though. There'll be a never-ending spawn of ads, and also the people, some of the brokers will get angry with you and start chasing the person who is carrying the item. You are slowed while you're carrying the item, and usually you have one person do this while everyone else is dealing with the ads that are now starting to form a train and follow you around. There are not many of them. It's not a big deal. But ultimately, you can use things like Soul Shape, you can use Venethir Teleport, other movement speed things will be available. And honestly, the traders are always in the same spot. Now, what you have to trade differs on a run-to-run basis. We did this dungeon twice, and it did change the order of what we needed to do. You can do this really, really quickly once you have a general idea of where the brokers are, where the gemstone guy is. He's always in the same spot every time you go into the dungeon. So once you get gems, like, oh, we go over here. So first time, took us a couple of minutes to get this right. Next time in, we smashed it to pieces. So I don't think it's going to be a hold-up like Court of Stars could have been. I actually think this is fine, and it's a little bit of fun. It's basically a mini gauntlet before you do the boss. If we were relating it to an old-school gauntlet where you just had waves of ads, I think this is a far superior system. You know where to go, and if you plan efficiently, then you will be able to do it super, super fast. I don't think anybody's going to struggle with this at all once they understand what's going on. Moving inside the Oasis, though, things get a little weird. We're going to have to play some music. Your group will form a band. So there is a band inside who is not pleasing the crowd. So you decide to pick up the instruments. There is a drum, there's a saxophone, vocals, and a couple of other instruments. There are 5 instruments total. And what you have here is a little mini game. Now, not to worry, we did some science with this. Basically, your minigame is different for every instrument. So you will have markers that you need to deal with. You will slide left and right depending on what you're doing. And basically, you're just gaining yourself a buff. This buff stacks up to 10 times. Now, once you've hit about 10 stacks, it will then have ads spawn because the crowd isn't enjoying your performance. I would have really liked to see here if the entire group nails their performance that it actually skipped these 2 trash waves. So you could, there's no music here right now, and it's actually dead silent, which means Blizzard is planning some music to go in with this rock playing scenario or jazz or whatever sound it eventually makes. But I would have really liked to have seen that if the whole group is nailing it, that you skip the trash and just get the boss. That would have been cool. Ultimately, though, you do get this nice damage bonus for doing the buttons correctly. You can't fail. The biggest problem with not getting your stuff right is that you won't get the damage buff on you personally. That's it. So it's really not a problem if you're worried about, I don't know what this instrument does, I don't know how to do this. Don't worry about it. One, it's very easy. Once you see how it works, you'll be fine. And on top of that, if you don't get it right, your personal damage will suffer a little bit. Not a big deal. Everybody's going to be fine with this. Ultimately, you have a couple of waves of ads to deal with. So in between each wave, you will jump back on your instruments, gain the damage buff again. Ultimately, after the second time you've jumped in, you will then get the boss. I would have also liked to have seen the music play some sort of role in the actual boss encounter itself. Whether or not we could counter certain spells by playing our instruments or been able to maintain the buff in some way. That would have been really nice to see the music theme carry on into the boss itself. Ultimately, you just jump off your instruments and just kill the boss with your damage bonus from doing the notes correctly. But it is really, really fun. This is a very cool mechanic and actually puts the Council of Blood dance situation to absolute shame, to my joy. That is going to be your final boss of Wing 1, though. The band playing is the last boss. That is it. You will get your... Once this is eventually Mythic Plus, that is where that will end, which then moves us into the second half of Tazavesh. This is where the second part will begin. And it does look like it begins with 0 trash. In fact, it's kind of interesting how they're managing the trash in the second half. We'll get to it in a second. But we're just going to... From what we could tell, at least in the Megadungeon version, you just spawn in front of the boss. Now... Ultimately, in the Mythic Plus version, they might put a bit of trash in here before this point, but this is how it goes in the Megadungeon version. So our first boss is going to be So Asmi. Now, So Asmi is, again, very, very cool. Some potential problems here for Blizzard to solve, though, but I do believe, and we kind of concluded, every problem we faced, we could have solved ourselves with a bit more communication and planning here. Now, for how that's going to work for Pugs, I don't know. How does this boss work then? Well, the boss has all these runes flying around, and you'll see they have shapes above them. So there'll be 2 runes floating around that have triangles above them, 2 runes that are floating around that have circles or squares. And these are teleporters, so the squares connect. So if you go through one of the square runes, you'll appear at the other square rune. Similar for any of the other shapes. These are just teleporters. They do have a cooldown, though, so you can't just spam run through them. And the idea here is there's basically 2 mechanics to this fight that you need to be teleporting around to avoid. One is a huge AoE that will emanate from one of the runes that if you teleport inside the ring, so it's a ring that's expanding, so you want to find a teleporter that will take you inside the ring past its crest as it's moving through the group, so you don't take any damage from it. So if it spawns from triangle, you might want to find the other triangle and then port through that so you'll appear in the dead center, and that way you avoid all the damage from it. As the fight goes on at certain health percentages, the boss will start dividing the room into ultimately quarters. So he divides it in half at first and then puts the room into quarters. And that is a line of sight wall. So what you need to be doing is being in the same quarter as the boss. Simultaneously, the bomb is going to be going off as well. So you need to be able to get out of your quarter and all move to a same sort of safe place. The only issue we found is the runes move around the room randomly, which means you could be in the quarter with the boss and have a rune that isn't going to take you anywhere useful and is also going to get you hurt. Now, that can be solved because what you could do is teleport very quickly, then to a place that has more teleporters near it, then go through that one to come back, which is a little difficult for a pug group. It's what we do on Artificer Mythic. Is the idea of going through and then immediately coming back, and I'm sure some of you have done it on Heroic and Normal as well. You can still do the mechanic, but on Mythic it's a required part of the mechanic. It can get a little tricky. I do wonder if some pugs will feel like they're trapped. I know I did on my first run, is I felt like there's nowhere for me to get out of this scenario, and furthermore, there are no runes to get me back to the boss. When in fact, there is. I just have to do some sort of round the houses movement in order to get there, but it is possible, and it's just one of those things that you'll need to manage. Now, after that, things get a little weird, because throughout this, we have been guided through the Veiled Market by one of the brokers opening teleporters. And in fact, you need to manually unlock the teleport system. In that first customs room, there is a series of 5 teleporters. Now, in order to activate them, you have to find the transport network guys throughout the dungeon and speak to them to activate their network transport. This means that you will open the portal in the first room. So if you wipe, you actually use those teleporters to get back to the boss. So if you don't speak to these teleporter guys and you wipe at some point, you might not be able to teleport as far into the dungeon as you'd actually progressed. So you do want to keep your eyes out for these guys and get these teleporters done. However, as we progress past Soa's army, the teleport is going to go wrong, and we're going to end up in Stormheim. Yes, we are in Stormheim in Legion, and we're going to deal with some Murlocs and stuff, which was really nice, actually. It felt like Eye of Ashara, for those of you who've been there before. Now, this is where the vast majority of this dungeon's trash is. Really curious as to what the dungeon trash percentage is going to be in here on Mythic Plus, because as it stands right now, the 95% of the trash in the entire second half of this dungeon is in this one room in Stormheim. And it's all Murlocs. Now, what they've done here is kind of clever, depending on how the trash percentages work. To get to the boss, you actually can travel through some really safe, easy packs. However, all the trash around that area contains these Murlocs, which are evil, because they constantly spam drop fish sticks. Yes, Kanye West fans. Fish sticks. Okay, they're going to keep dropping fish sticks. And these heal every Murloc around them for a lot. I mean, we did one pull because there was so much trash in here. It was all Murlocs. We were like, YOLO, right? Let's pull everything. They did 10 million healing, and I think we only pulled 3 packs. These fish sticks are heavy. You can kill them, but they have quite a number of quite a large amount of HP. I want to point out here, I was playing on standard UI, which had no proper nameplates. It just has health bars. Which made it a little trickier to find the guys. They're the all-white Murlocs with bright red hair. Those are the guys that are dropping it. So they can only be stopped from casting fish sticks with stuns. It's an uninterruptible cast. So some form of disorientate, fear, CC, anything that's a hard CC does seem to stop them casting it. Which means that if you focus them and kill them, you're fine. But once you get a couple of these guys working together who are spam casting this heal totem, you're going to have to start kiting. The heal totem does have a radius, but you want to be focusing these guys down. That's a big problem. You can CC them, though. Like, you can sheep them or frost trap them and pull the rest of the group away from them. The rest of the group has very little HP, but it does go back to that theme that there's one particularly very nasty enemy in these packs. That's the one you want to be watching out for. I think they're called scale callers or scale menders, something on those lines. You'll see it in the footage anyway. But those are the guys you want to watch for. So all the trash around this room has this trash. Now, the next boss, I'm going to show you some footage of it. However, it is bugged right now. Some cases have said that they've managed to do this right. We tried multiple times and it just bugged out every single time. So the actual way we killed this boss is not the legitimate way. It is just the way we got around it being bugged. So Hildebrand, classic sort of Stormheim-looking enemy, has callbacks to Odin. For those of you who did the Trial of Valor raid with the rune colors. You remember you got the rune colors above your head and you had to go and stand on the appropriate platforms? Kind of like that. So he does spawn some ads, and these ads will channel a defensive spell on him that reduces damage taken by 25% per stack. You don't want that to happen. These ads need to be stunned. Again, they can't just be kicked. They need to be stunned in order to be dealt with. You want to bring these ads down real quick. But his intermission phase is where it gets really interesting. So his intermission phase is going to spawn 4 colored runic orbs, okay? They're going to be in the middle of the room. So that's 1 orb for 4 players, and then there's a Titan console in the room as well. So the way this works is that one person clicks the Titan console. It's then going to show you which holes the orbs need to go into. So in the room, there are 4 holes, 2 to the left, 2 to the right, and they need orbs of the right color to go into them to cancel this phase. Otherwise, this phase kills you. It fills the room with sludge in order to kill you. Now, the problem we had is that the colors kept changing on the orbs, and it was a mess. But that's the idea. The idea is one person will click the console, see where the orbs are supposed to go. You can have some world markers down. Shouldn't be a huge issue. And then the people go and grab the appropriate colored orbs and put them in the right holes. And then the fight carries on. So if you do this correctly, you should be able to complete this very, very quickly. It also sounds like a weak aura would be very easy to be made for this in order to make it much, much easier for a group that doesn't have any form of communication. Unfortunately, none of that worked. As it stands right now, there is a safe spot in the room where you can just wait the phase out. So that's what we did to get around it. We did try to do it legitimately a load of times, and if we did, the fight would be significantly faster and more interesting. So if it looks like, you know, you see that AFK phase, you're like, what the hell is this? That's not intended. That's not the way it's supposed to be done. We just found a spot where you didn't die, so we just had to wait the phase out and then just nuke him down. But ultimately, it will be a very cool boss when it's working. A nice bit of communication there. Could be a pug killer. I have to wait and see whether people have add-ons. It's certainly... It could be a Mist of Turner Scythe 2.0, potentially, be able to get there. Now, let's move to the second to last boss here, which is the one that many of you may have been excited about. I was actually very disappointed here, which is the Pirate Dragon, Time Captain Hook Tail. Time Captain Hook Tail is the Pirate Dragon. So it is a dragon boss on a beach. There is a ship that is helping the dragon out. One basic mechanic to this. There is a constant stream of sailor ads. We are now in Borealis. This is where this part takes place. That are streaming from the beach or from the ship offshore and are just fixating on people. That's all they're doing. They're just fixating on people. The way you actually kill them, because they have a lot of HP and they're jabait, really. You're supposed to nuke the boss. Is the boss does something called Infinite Breath, which is a very clearly marked cone coming out of its mouth, which will kill the ads. Not only that, the cannon barrage from the ships itself also damage the ads. So the ads are supposed to be taken care of by the boss and the ship itself, not you. You're supposed to kill the boss. And the way you do this is when the breath is coming, you just run through to the other side of the breath. It's relatively thin, depending on where you're stood, obviously. Run through it, and the ads will sort of make their way through it and get caught in the blast and should die. This is a fight that I can see if people don't understand that mechanic and start AoEing constantly is going to take you forever to do. Certainly when Tyrannical's involved, and you'll be overwhelmed anyway if you don't do this properly. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to stand on the boss and just AoE constantly, you're not doing anybody any favors by doing that whatsoever. So maybe try and avoid that one. Our final boss, and easily the most spectacular of the bosses, we are returning to Tazavesh now. Only the two bosses do take place outside of Tazavesh itself. Sol Lee. Sol Lee is wonderful. What a very, very cool boss. Lots going on here. A really nice move towards graphical stuff. Kind of pulling from Final Fantasy XIV a little bit. As to the style, I'm sure you'll see this in the background. But the first boss you kill, as soon as when you engage Sol Lee only has a couple of mechanics, which is to spawn a couple of ads and do the collapsing star mechanic. The collapsing star is probably going to be relatively new for a lot of dungeon guys. I don't think dungeon people, I'm not saying dungeon people like a second-rate thing, but if you're not a raider, you probably haven't seen a mechanic like this before. I'm trying to think of one. However, you have to soak the orb, but every time you touch the orb, you have to touch the orb in order to soak it, the collapsing star. It will debuff the whole raid with a damage over time effect. So the trick here is to wait for it to dissipate before you soak it again. You do want to get rid of this thing because it's very dangerous, but you don't want to get multiple stacks of the debuff because it will just wreck your entire group. It requires a lot of healing to deal with Collapsing Star. It's easily the most dangerous mechanic in the fight if done improperly. So you want to... We had the tank do it. Unless it was spawned too far away, it can spawn anywhere in the room, in which case I might run in and get the first one. While the rest of the group slowly moves over so we can gather up for healing. But essentially all you want to do is bang your head on it, wait until the debuff runs out, do it again, wait until the debuff runs out, do it again. I think you have to hit it 3 or 4 times in order to dissipate the collapsing star, but that's how you deal with it. What you don't want to do is go bang, 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 and get four stacks of the debuff because your whole group will just be eradicated instantly. Now while that's going on, at 40% the boss is going to change into its elemental form. And this is where things get a little bit more interesting. So it spawns these brown stars around the room, the Super Mario-style stars, and then it will mark every player with a pathway. Now, you can... 100%, we confirmed this on the last poll, you can do... You have to break the stars to get this boss out of this phase. He takes no damage during this phase. It's entirely possible to break all of the stars in one go, if you get the path correct. So... It doesn't particularly matter, at least in Mythic Zero, that you don't do this, but it is possible to do this. We didn't do it a single time, but we knew it was possible because people like trying to figure out where in the order they will go. So essentially the boss is going to shoot something out that's going to hit every player, and you can make that travel around all the stars and then break all the stars, and that will get him out of the phase. If you don't do it, you just do the phase again, right? And you take some damage when this orb or ricocheting bolts, whatever you want to call it, hits out of the boss. All you do is stand under the stars. So if you're really struggling with this, you just stand under the stars and it will hit at least 2 or 3 of them per go. and get it done. That's as simple as that. What you're trying to avoid is the lines overlapping, but really don't overthink this, right? Don't overthink this mechanic. Just stand under the stars, do the best you can, and it will break them. You might have to do it a couple of times, but once they're broken, back in. Great mechanic, though. A little bit of quick organization from the group is really, really cool here, and it's going to be nice to see people nail this correctly, so that's good. And the other mechanic here is the ricocheting bolts that will hit all of the stars. The brown stars will move around the room, and then they will ricochet off each other and fire out these fans of blades, which look fantastic. They have huge hitboxes, though. There are definitely occasions where I was like, I'm not in this, and got hit by it, but I always say that, so God bless. Which are then going to bounce off each other and then set off the whole room and detonate it. And you'll have these sequences sort of repeating as the boss works its way down. But what a fantastic final boss. Doesn't have something big and spectacular like the large Megaton boss or going on a spaceship or anything like that, but it is a satisfying end to Tazavesh. What's my ultimate conclusion with this? I really like this dungeon because I like interesting bosses. Like, that's overwhelming to me. Like, the interesting bosses are good for me. I would say I had a sort of Violet Hold flashback, which is... the environment is lovely. What you do in the environment, not particularly good. Like, there's so much... and I think it comes down to that thing is there's so much possibility for the Veiled Market that you kind of hope there was more to do in there for the people enjoying Mythic Zero, maybe not just thinking about racing through Mythic Plus. There's so much Blizzard could do inside the Veiled Market in order to make it a much more visitable experience for the more casual player, and I would really like them to explore that, who aren't interested in time and maybe want to go and visit the Veiled Market for ulterior reasons rather than gear. But the bosses make it or break it, and for me, the bosses, all of them are really good. The only semi-forgettable one for me was the Menagerie, and even that's pretty cool. Everything else has a lot of flavor, a lot of fun to it. Everything seems like with a little bit of practice, you would absolutely swim through this dungeon and have a great time. My concerns mainly lie in, like, the second half. Are we going to just have to deal with mass amounts of Murloc AoE in order to get trash percentage, or are they accounting for that in some other way? If that's the only thing they have for trash in there, that could get really annoying. It might have that feel that you have in the Gnomish dungeon right now. I forget the name of it offhand. I should check. I do have it in front of me. Which is the one from... oh, it's a BFA one. the BFA gnome one. That one. You know the one. I'm gonna get it right. Motherload. You know Motherload, where you deal with the open area for quite a lot of the trash, and then there's just boss. That can get old real quick and can kind of get tedious. So I hope they sort of figure that out. Maybe you don't need as much trash as I suspect you might do. I kind of feel like people are going to clear that whole room, because it is possible with coordinated CC and strong enough AoE. Yeah, you can blast that room into pieces. If it goes wrong, though, it's really game over. So that's going to be a big problem there. I like it. I like it a lot. It did not leave me with that, like, oh my god, like I felt with Karazhan. And a lot of people saying in my chat today that Karazhan was a remake. It was a full remake. Like, Karazhan, the dungeon, the Megadungeon, did not really resemble the main Karazhan in terms of structure, layout, theme. It went much wilder with it. I would consider that a separate dungeon. Besides the Iran references, not really. That's my personal take on it, though. You feel free to disagree with that. Mechagon's first half, I thought was fun. It was a reused area, but it was done in a way that I thought was pretty cool, and I liked the idea of the hard mode variation on a number of the bosses to increase the difficulty and present its own different challenges. Don't really have that in Tazavesh. And I loved the second half. I just wish I think I said the same thing about Mechagon, is that I just wish they'd explored the city a bit more. The Veiled Market does do that. It explores the city a bit more. But now we're missing on the liveliness and the feel of it being a market. Like, in the beginning part, it does feel like that, and then it quickly kind of turns into a dungeon with trash walking around. It does remind me more of Court of Stars than anything else, I would say. In the mid-section, it reminds me of Court of Stars. But other than that, I think it's a worthy addition to the Megadungeon name, honestly. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Look forward to testing it yourselves. If you want to test this out, you don't have to wait to 9.1, of course. It is available on the PTR right now. So as I leave you with that message, just a reminder, our new merch is in, our new space theme for this year. If you want to pick up a shirt, you can do over on our website at breachgaming.com. So other than that, thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.